Hey everybody, my name is Alex with Hake Hardware, and in this video I'm going to talk about Spaceport. So Spaceport is an application that I built for Autonomys that will help you monitor your Autonomys farms and nodes. And what it really boils down to is that it's an event management and visualization platform. So to explain it a little bit better, I made this diagram here, which it's a little bit busy, but we'll start on the left-hand side here. So this application, Spaceport, runs in Docker, and there are three containers that gets deployed. So we have Hubble, that's the log parser and event creation. So this is going to actually parse your autonomous Docker containers for the logs and create events from them. Then we have Cosmos, which has the event database, the infrastructure state, and does the infrastructure visualization, and that's going to be through a web front end built on Next.js. And then lastly, we have the MySQL database, which we will deploy in a Docker container. So it's actually really easy. All of this setup, if you already have your autonomous farms and cluster and node in Docker, this all happens. You can deploy Spaceport in a couple of minutes, maybe even less than that. So it's super easy. But let's get into a little bit more about the infrastructure. So how it works is Spaceport Hubble is built in Python, and it uses the Docker library for Python, and it will hook into your containers. It'll automatically detect your autonomous containers and scrape the logs, and it will go back to the beginning of the log. So it's like maybe you've had your containers running for a couple of days. It's actually going to go back to the beginning of when you started that container, scrape all the logs, and then continue to scrape them going forward. And if you shut off Spaceport for a day and then turn it back on, it'll go back a day and scrape all the logs that it missed. So it's actually pretty cool. And all those logs, certain ones are turned into events. I actually try and make almost every log an event, even if it's not like an interesting log, but just so that you can search the events in the database and have kind of like a database of events that you're able to explore. And then certain events also have actions associated with them, so that helps you like keep track of the plotting progress for a farm. Now, some of these features aren't implemented yet, but the infrastructure is there for them and they will get implemented. Currently, it's very basic, and that's because up until now I have just been making sure that I can actually build something like this, because this isn't something that I do as a day job. It's just a side project of mine, and it all does work. So now that I have the proof of concept done, that it actually works, and I have a very simple feature set, I can build on that feature set. So how it works, getting back to that, is we have Spaceport Hubble. That is running as a Docker container. It's written in Python using the Docker library, and it scrapes the logs, turns them into events, and sends them to the Cosmos API. That API will then store them in the database depending on like what it is. So there's an event table, there will be a sector table, there will be a farm table, there'll be a farmer table, there'll be a node table. There's a bunch of different tables, and they're going to hold different state. Some of them hold state, some of them hold events. So like every time you get a reward, that's going to be stored as a row in the reward table. That's not state, those are just a history of your rewards. But plotting progress for a farm, so a farm actually is like an entity and contains state, so it'll have various state that gets updated depending on the events that occur. So that's how Hubble interacts with Cosmos. Now Cosmos is built with Next.js, it has a server and a client aspect to it. So we can actually run both a front end and a back end, basically like a full stack application. And that is why we have, using Prisma library, we're able to deploy a database and an API built into Cosmos, as well as a front end, which it's JavaScript, but it's using Next.js It's very similar to like React. In fact, almost identical for the front end to React, and then you have the database, and that's MySQL, and that'll be also a Docker container, which is super easy to deploy. Um, and all of this is open source, so I have these are going to change. The name's going to change. Right now it says Event Manager, but this is actually Hubble, and you can go through and look at, and I'll fill out the README. This is pretty early on. There's some things I need to do, but yeah, you can go through the code and check it out if you want. It's pretty easy. Like we have all the events listed here, so you can see like NAT's connected, and you can see if there's like an event action associated with it, if there's any specific data that's being extracted. You can see the what's it called? The regex pattern that it's looking for to actually pull in that, and you can see like the description and all different types of things here. You can go through, and some of them do. You can see we're extracting data, and you can see we're getting like a farm index and a farm ID from when a newly discovered farm initialized successfully. Like we get that information. So you can browse through the code if you're interested. Same with Hubble. Again, this is Next.js. This isn't Hubble, actually. This is Cosmos. It's very confusing. I'm going to rename these repositories. But again, you can go through the source code, and if you're curious about how anything works, and if you want to build your own Docker images, there's a Docker file in here, and then like a Docker compose that you can use. And it's super straightforward. So now actually let's take a look. I have it running right here. Again, in a Docker container. So if we log into Docker here, we go to my stacks. I have Spaceport running. You can see it's pretty simple. We have Spaceport Cosmos. That's pulling in an image. We have MySQL, and it's running locally, so who cares? Like root password is password. Like there's not sensitive data in here. I could not care less if this is not very well protected with a password, but you'll be able to build the image yourself if you want to use like real passwords. But if you're just going to use the Docker Hub images, you have to just use the default stuff because that's actually built into the image. And then if I go back out here, we have Hubble. And again, like super easy to deploy, very small. And we can check out like the Hubble logs. We can see the events are getting picked up. So last we had finished plotting sector successfully, and that happened at, this is Zulu time 2028, but if we look in here, it was 128 local time here. So we don't have any of these other menu items yet, but the dashboard is working. It's going to display the latest 5 events, and it refreshes every 10 seconds. So that way we will always have the latest, and if it happened within an hour, it will have a little new badge on here. I don't have any recent events, so this is the latest of what I got, but that is what it looks like. And I have an article that I'll link in the YouTube video that goes over a little bit of the structure and kind of, there's some mobile views here. You can see this is what the new badge looks like. And then some of the information on like what new features I'm planning to deploy. There's not a whole lot here, but in fact, this video probably covers more than what the article does, but feel free to check it out. And what I'm going to do next is start working on the guide, which I have mostly done, and I'll make a Substack article for it and a YouTube video on how to get Spaceport working. Again, you have to be using Docker for it to work, but I already have guides for Docker and Portainer, so you can run these stack files pretty easily. So that is Spaceport. There's going to be a whole lot more, so stay tuned.